Prince Harry's fragile attempt to maintain his global image crumbled spectacularly after a live television showdown with Fox News host Greg Gutfeld turned into one of the most humiliating moments of his post-royal life. What began as a carefully orchestrated PR appearance quickly spiraled into disaster when Gutfeld, armed with a sharp tongue and a determination to hold the Duke of Sussex accountable, unleashed a verbal barrage that left Harry visibly shaken and scrambling for words. The clash, now circulating across major networks and social media platforms, has been branded by critics as the moment Harry's credibility collapsed in real time. Gutfeld, known for his no-nonsense commentary and fearless jabs at hypocrisy, accused Harry of manipulating public sympathy, exploiting his royal ties for financial gain, and dishonoring the very institutions he claims to champion. The tension erupted the moment Gutfeld raised the question of accountability. With millions watching live, the host cut through the polished narrative Harry has so often leaned upon: his victimhood, his strained ties with the royal family, his relentless claims of press persecution. Gutfeld countered with sharp facts: multi-million-dollar deals with streaming giants, questionable charity finances, and a lifestyle far removed from the everyman image Harry tries to project. According to insiders present at the recording, Harry's demeanor shifted instantly. His jaw tightened, his voice faltered, and for the first time in recent memory, the prince who has built a brand around confidence and rebellion looked cornered, exposed, and utterly unprepared. What made the moment especially explosive was Gutfeld's refusal to allow Harry any escape route. When the Duke attempted to shift blame toward the press and his family, Gutfeld doubled down, demanding explanations for the $50 million discrepancy tied to Senebail, the very charity Harry once championed as his noble legacy. The host pressed with unrelenting clarity: where had the money gone? Who was accountable? And why was the man once hailed as Diana's son now surrounded by financial and ethical shadows? Harry's evasive replies did little to ease the damage. Instead, they amplified the impression of a man caught in the act, fumbling to protect a crumbling facade. The fallout has been seismic. Political commentators, media analysts, and even longtime supporters of Harry have admitted the optics were catastrophic. He wasn't just unprepared, he was demolished. One insider commented. Clips of the exchange have gone viral, with headlines dubbing Harry everything from royal hustler to professional victim. What began as an attempt to remind the world of his advocacy for veterans and mental health spiraled into a full-blown credibility crisis. Even Invictus Games supporters, once unwaveringly loyal, have started questioning whether Harry's constant controversies had become a distraction rather than a beacon of hope. The backlash grew louder when transcripts from the clash revealed that Gutfeld had directly accused Harry of turning his mother's legacy into a commercial brand, weaponizing Diana's tragic memory to fuel book sales, streaming contracts, and public appearances. "Your mother stood for dignity," Gutfeld said sharply. "What exactly do you stand for, Prince Harry? Because from where I sit, it looks like entitlement dressed up as victimhood." The silence that followed was deafening. Harry, visibly rattled, offered a vague retort about being misunderstood, but the damage had already been done. In that instant, the carefully cultivated narrative of the persecuted prince seemed to shatter under the weight of public scrutiny. This confrontation did not take place in a vacuum. For years, critics have accused Harry of hypocrisy, denouncing media intrusion while simultaneously selling his most private royal experiences to the highest bidder. His memoir, Spare, was a publishing juggernaut, but also exposed some accusations of betrayal and self-pity. Netflix and Spotify deals worth millions positioned him as a global celebrity, yet also cemented the idea that Harry was cashing in on a monarchy he claimed to detest. Gutfeld tapped directly into these contradictions, forcing Harry into the one position he has spent years avoiding, defending himself without the safety net of scripted interviews and sympathetic hosts. The middle act of this drama reveals even deeper cracks in Harry's post-royal empire. Reports have emerged that major sponsors and backers of the Invictus Games have privately expressed unease about continuing their association with the Duke. While no official withdrawals have been announced, insiders confirm that discussions about risk mitigation are underway. Donors and corporations alike are wary of being dragged into the whirlwind of scandal and controversy now permanently attached to Harry's name. It's becoming less about veterans and more about Harry's personal drama. One source close to Invictus leadership revealed, "That's not what we signed up for. Meanwhile, Meghan Markle has reportedly been urging Harry to stay away from unscripted media confrontations, fearing exactly this kind of public implosion. According to sources close to the couple, Meghan was livid at how the exchange played out, believing it set back months of careful brand building for their Archewell Foundation. For Meghan, who has always sought to control the narrative, Harry's inability to withstand Gutfeld's pressure without unraveling was nothing short of disaster. Their Hollywood allies, already hesitant after failed projects and lukewarm public reception, are now reportedly questioning whether the Sussexes remain a sound investment. The consequences ripple further still. Across Britain, polls suggest that public sympathy for Harry is plummeting yet again. Even among those who once supported his decision to break free from royal tradition, the repeated controversies are wearing thin. Tabloids have seized upon Gutfeld's verbal takedown, plastering headlines that echo the sentiment of betrayal. Diana's son or Hollywood fraud? The monarchy, for its part, has remained characteristically silent, but palace insiders suggest King Charles and Prince William view the debacle as further proof that Harry has become untethered from reality. For William especially, who has worked tirelessly to protect Diana's legacy with dignity, watching his brother weaponize their mother's memory for profit has been described as a personal affront. And yet, perhaps the most damning aspect of this saga is Harry's own reaction. Sources close to the Duke say he has been in a state of quiet panic since the broadcast, furious at being blindsided and humiliated on such a global stage. He reportedly feels betrayed by his advisors for allowing him to walk into a media lion's den without adequate preparation. But insiders counter that no preparation could have saved him. The truth, they argue, is that Harry has relied for too long on controlled narratives and sympathetic interviewers. Against a figure like Gutfeld, who thrives on exposing contradictions and dismantling carefully crafted images, Harry was destined to falter. The firestorm that erupted after Greg Gutfeld's brutal takedown of Prince Harry on live television did not fizzle out the next morning. It exploded. Headlines across America and Britain replayed the heated exchange, calling it a cultural moment where entertainment collided with accountability. Gutfeld, known for his acerbic wit and unwillingness to dance around sensitive issues, had called out Harry with such unapologetic precision that even those who once defended the Duke of Sussex struggled to find words. The clash had revealed something raw. The public had grown weary of Harry's endless grievances and contradictions, and Gutfeld had simply said what millions were thinking but dared not voice. What made the segment so devastating for Harry was not just the accusations themselves, entitlement, hypocrisy, opportunism, but the timing. Just days before, Harry had attempted to relaunch his public image with a series of interviews portraying himself as a misunderstood humanitarian who left Britain out of principle, not pride. Yet Gutfeld, tearing through those talking points, dismantled the carefully rehearsed narrative piece by piece. He pointed out the contradiction of preaching about climate change while flying private jets, of calling for privacy while producing documentaries for streaming platforms, and of condemning the media while using that same media as his personal megaphone. The audience laughed, cheered, and clapped, not because the jokes were cruel, but because they carried the sting of truth. The fallout was immediate. Across social media, clips of Harry's visibly uncomfortable reactions circulated like wildfire, with commentators dissecting every awkward smile, every defensive word, every desperate attempt to wrestle back control of the narrative. The hashtag associated with the exchange trended for hours, drowning out any attempt from Harry's PR team to spin the situation. The more his camp tried to frame him as a victim of right-wing attacks, the more the public seemed to turn against him, noting that Harry was no longer an innocent outsider bullied by the monarchy, but a wealthy celebrity who had mastered the art of playing both sides whenever convenient. Even within media circles usually sympathetic to Harry, there was a shift. Journalists who once treaded lightly around his name admitted that Gutfeld had touched a nerve. For years, Harry had benefited from a strange blend of deference and pity, but the patience of both the press and the public appeared to have finally run out. The sentiment was clear. Harry was no longer untouchable, and his contradictions could no longer be glossed over. Behind the palace gates, insiders whispered that King Charles and Prince William privately welcomed the clash. According to sources, Charles had long grown weary of his son's self-pitying interviews, while William saw the moment as proof that public opinion was swinging in his favor. While they remained silent in public, Their courtiers reportedly noted that the damage Harry was suffering from American commentators would be far more difficult to dismiss than attacks from the British press. This wasn't a monarch or a brother criticizing him. This was America, his supposed safe haven, holding him accountable. But the real danger for Harry went beyond bad headlines. Donors tied to his various ventures began raising questions about credibility, fearing that their names could be tarnished by association. Corporate sponsors, already hesitant after years of royal drama, reportedly considered pausing negotiations with Harry and Meghan's foundation, even among Invictus Games supporters. There were quiet discussions about whether the Duke's personal baggage was overshadowing the mission. For an organization built on resilience, loyalty, and selflessness, having its figurehead portrayed as a hypocrite threatened to undermine years of hard work. Harry's anger, according to insiders, boiled over in private. Friends close to the Sussex circle claimed he raged over being ambushed and humiliated on live television, vowing to retaliate with his own media campaign. Meghan, sources say, attempted to calm him, urging him to ignore the clash and focus on upcoming projects. But those close to the situation insist Harry's pride had been wounded far too deeply for him to simply walk away. For a man who had carefully cultivated his image as a truth-teller and reformer, being portrayed instead as the very embodiment of privilege and hypocrisy cut to the bone. Yet the irony of Harry's fury was impossible to ignore. His entire public persona over the past 5 years had been built on speaking his truth, no matter how inconvenient it was for others. He demanded transparency from the monarchy, accountability from the press, and compassion from the public. But when the mirror was finally turned on him, he recoiled. Gutfeld's takedown wasn't just an attack. It was a moment of reckoning, forcing Harry to face the fact that the same scrutiny he unleashed on others would inevitably circle back to him. The cultural impact of the clash only grew as other commentators piled in. Late-night hosts referenced the moment in monologues, YouTube channels dissected every frame, and podcasts debated whether Harry's carefully constructed image had reached its breaking point. What began as one heated segment quickly became a larger conversation about hypocrisy in celebrity activism, with Harry as its unwilling poster child. The fact that Greg Gutfeld, a figure who thrives on challenging cultural elites, had been the one to spark it only added fuel to the fire. By the week's end, Harry stood not just exposed, but diminished. His words carried less weight. His grievances sounded more hollow, and his carefully polished PR machine appeared powerless against a wave of criticism. Where once he had been seen as Diana's brave son, a man of principle willing to take on the monarchy, he was now portrayed as a pampered exile, struggling to survive in a world where celebrity charm was no longer enough. The heated clash with Gutfeld had not just embarrassed him, it stripped away the protective veneer he had enjoyed for years, leaving only the uncomfortable truth.